I must say that I am and have been deeply troubled at the attitude that this administration has adopted towards Israel. Let me be clear, I don't come here today to create this into a partisan issue. I don't want it to be a partisan issue. In fact, one of the great successes of American foreign policy towards Israel has been the strong bipartisan support that Israel enjoys in the House and the Senate for almost every American president since Israel's founding at the conclusion of World War II. But I am concerned about the position this administration has taken. I was concerned about the amount of pressure that the Secretary of State was placing on the Israelis to enter into a negotiation with the Palestinian Authority that didn't have the authority or the power to reach a peace agreement that they could possibly enforce, much less deliver on. I was concerned that that pressure was being put on them at a time when Israel faced so many other challenges, the number one being the ambitions that Iran has to acquire a nuclear weapon and long-range rockets that could strike Israel and eventually the mainland of the United States. And I think it's safe to say that the relationship between the Israeli government has never been worse towards an American president for more than 2 decades. And that has an impact on this region. And I think, unfortunately, it's had an impact here. I've also been concerned, by the way, by some of this moral equivalence that's going on in both the press and some of the emails that I'm getting and some of the public statements I'm hearing some make in some quarters, not here in the Senate, but in some other places. This idea that, well, both sides are to blame. That's an interesting concept, but it isn't true. It is tragic, unfortunately, that civilians are dying in Gaza. But the reason why civilians are dying is 100% Hamas's fault. You see, this is an organization that puts rockets and military installations right next to nurseries and hospitals and civilian population centers. And you know why they do that? You know why they do that? They do that because they know that when they launch a rocket, Israel will respond by hitting that rocket launcher. And when that rocket launcher is destroyed, so are the areas around it. And then they can get the cameras to go in there and say, look what Israel did. They wiped out a nursery or an apartment building. They do it on purpose. They know exactly what they are doing. They're doing so they can get the kind of coverage that, unfortunately, even some American press outlets are buying into now. Here's the bottom line, and Senator Graham was alluding to this a moment ago. Before Israel does extraordinary things with regards to this, they drop leaflets into population centers warning, we're going to have to conduct a military operation in your region. Please evacuate. Please go somewhere else where you'll be safe. Hamas doesn't do that. In fact, Hamas deliberately targets population centers to terrorize the people of Israel. And we should condemn it for what it is. There is no moral equivalence here. And so now the situation has continued to spiral out of control. And it's reached a point where the news today now is that Israel's begun to conduct some ground operations. And these ground operations that they're conducting has to do with a tunnel network in Gaza that, as early as this morning, was used by Hamas to try to infiltrate terrorists through those tunnels into Israel, to conduct terrorist activity and kill Israelis. So put yourself in the position of this country. Small and geographically isolated, surrounded by terrorist groups and some unfriendly countries, threatened by the prospect of an Iranian nuclear weapon, and being hit by 1,300 rockets in just the last week. They have no choice but to defend themselves, using all the power at their disposal. They have no choice. And not only should no one here be criticizing that, but we should be supporting it and aligning ourselves 100% on their side. Because what they are fighting for here, this is not some dispute over borders. This is not some geopolitical dispute about who owns what territory. Israel is fighting for their very survival. On the other side of this conflict is a terrorist organization bent on their destruction. On the other side of this conflict is a terrorist organization in Hamas, and truth be told, the Palestinian Authority, that's whose schools teach children not just to hate Israel, but to hate Jews. And how could you possibly say you are for peace when your schools are actively teaching your children to hate another people? That's what's on the other side of this conflict. And so Israel has no choice. They are fighting for their very survival. And I think that now more than ever, what they need from this country is a president and a U.S. government that aligns itself squarely on their side. No double talk, no fancy diplomatic language that you can read between the lines on. A very clear statement. In this conflict, we are on Israel's side, and we will support them with anything they need to ensure their stability and their survival. Very clear language that makes it unequivocally clear. Hamas is a terrorist organization, not a legitimate representative of the aspirations of the Palestinian people, but a terrorist organization designed for the very destroying the Jewish state. We need to make these things abundantly clear.